Recording. Okay, you're good.
Just keep things pulled up here. Get the stopwatch. Okay. Right. I need to do this too. All right. Start in 3, 2, 1. So, did you know that it only takes a small 25% body fat for a man to be considered obese and a similar 35% for women? The National Institute of Health says that an approximate 300,000 deaths per year result from obesity. And despite the large impact that obesity has on people of our nation, there seems to be a trend in misinformation that high-level influencers or people of media will be putting out, whether it be on purpose or not. So obesity is, like, let it be known, obesity is quite a big problem. It is a drain on our resources, on the people, on the resources of government. And it is being misinformed about right now. And there is little being done to change that. So what is being done to change? How are we helping this problem? One of the main things that has been a consistent trend throughout the past couple of years has been government regulation. And with fast food companies, there's been quite the back and forth between fast food companies and government regulations on their food. And a great example is in 2017, there was a soda tax that was allegedly trying to help with obesity. And the thought was, you make people drink less soda, it's more expensive, they have less sugars in their body. You would assume that it would work, but realistically it didn't, because those companies are more than just sodas. They're sugar and processed food all throughout. So yeah, it didn't end up doing much. And as a writer for Fortune stated, that such specific taxes are unfair and promote the nanny state phenomenon of government overregulation. But why is this overregulation necessarily a bad thing? The Center for Disease Control and Prevention collected an estimate that approximately $200 billion a year was being spent from the government towards Medicare and Medicaid, which is obviously a huge, huge number. And even though government spending is much, much bigger than that, a lot of it is coming into health and Medicare. And a lot of the reason that we need to put so much money into health and Medicare is because of obesity. Obesity is a large problem. A large quantity of that. So yeah, it's obviously the issue. And despite it being such an issue, these social media influencers are creating misconstructions of the idea on the internet, which I think is probably one of the bigger problems, in my opinion. That there are these social media influencers who will avoid conflict over anything else. They will make sure not to offend their viewer base, because they want to keep their viewers high, of course. And because of this, that ends up leading to the misconstruction of information that obese people will believe that their body being massive and over 400 pounds is acceptable. And it's like there's there's too many situations for me to say that it's not that it isn't acceptable in some situations, because it is. Some situations it is genetic, and there's no point in fighting it. You more or less would just want to keep a healthy lifestyle within the rest of yourselves and not trying to keep your body weight down. But that's beside the point. Yeah, these social media influencers will say that it is perfectly fine for you to be 400 pounds overweight. And that is definitely an issue. As USA Today actually noted, these influencers on social media, on TikTok and Instagram, have created an easy target base for some pharmaceutical companies. There are these drug peddling companies that will attempt to sell their quick fix pills to obese members of society, and it really doesn't actually help much. These pills, they will create advertisements of a 200-pound obese man or a large obese man frolicking about a field, like saying that he has no problems whatsoever, when realistically these pills are just pumping him up with insulin or sugar and just delaying the problem, and they're not actually helping. These advertisements aren't looking to help the person, they're just looking to sell more drugs. So yeah. How do we help this issue though? What can you take home and do to help this issue? Well, you can go eat healthy. You can be healthy yourself. You can eat healthy, go exercise, and make sure that you are not one of the expenses on the government. Make sure that you are a cheap person for the government. I try to do that myself for sure. And the last thing you can do is spread the word. Go tell everybody that you know, or go inform yourself first, and then go inform others. Go let other people know about the misinformation that might be out there. And if you do see a really big person parading around in their pride for their 500-pound body, don't go and shame them. Don't make them feel bad about themselves, but do try to inform, and who knows, you might end up saving that person's life by giving them the will to make a change. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, good job. Does anyone want to go next?
Guess I'll go. I kind of have to have my headphones on because it's the only microphone I have.
You're good, no problem.
All right. Give me the heads up when you start the timer, if that's all right. Homelessness is a concept that should be taught in every elementary school across the country. Children should learn about the concept of homelessness, about how they can lose their jobs, and about how they should avoid drugs, because that could also lead to homelessness. This is a bit of an uncomfortable subject, I understand, for all of us because of the sheer fact that this could happen to anyone. And that's all the more reason why the sooner people learn about this ASAP in elementary school, the better. Because this is important for us to learn as soon as possible so we can help avoid it later on. Funny thing enough, though, not many elementary schools do actually teach about this. And why is that? Okay, let's take a look at an article named "Homelessness is a Difficult Knowledge and Early Childhood Development," written by a journal article about the early childhood education. According to Kim J, an article back in 2020, it is difficult to learn, it's difficult to teach about this in elementary schools because it goes against what a lot of schools actually teach. Then a lot of elementary schools teach about how you can just drive your dreams, how if you just work hard enough, how you should have a high self-esteem or have a high ego or have high self-confidence. So it's kind of difficult to teach that and immediately tell them your dreams can be crushed. How you can lose everything is kind of jarring. But despite that difficulties, it is imperatively important. Now, the reason why I believe not only should they learn the concept of homelessness, but also because about how they can lose their jobs and how and about drugs is because according to the National Association to End Homelessness, 48% of the people who became homeless is because they lost their job, 28% is because of drugs. There are also other factors such as mental illness or physical disability, and that is also good to learn about. But realistically speaking, if you already have a mental illness or physical disability, learning about it is not going to help you avoid that. But learning about the importance of avoiding drugs and learning about the fact that you could lose your job is something that's good to learn to help prepare you for later on in life. And it is paramount that elementary school students learn about this ASAP. And I know what some of you might be thinking. I can barely remember stuff I learned back in elementary school, and that is fine. Sometimes we forget things, and it is actually a natural process of just living in general. But even if you're just exposed to something once, it could be a huge difference. And this relates to the psychology of how you remember things. When you're first exposed to something, you go through a process called encoding. It is when you're exposed to something, even if you forget about it later on, the sheer fact that you were exposed to it means later on you'll have an easier time learning it. You'll have an easier time remembering it because you've already been exposed to it. It's there. So even if you're an elementary school student and you've just had one day to learn about homelessness, just one day, anywhere in your time in elementary school, later on in life, when the subject is brought up, when it's important, when it matters, you'll have an easier time remembering it, an easier time to getting ready should the need arise. Now, my apologies. Sorry about that, technical issues. Carrying on. Now, and a bit of evidence to show that this is true. Let's take a look at this is information I've got from an author named Milana Pinola, an author for a company called Sapir that studies psychology. Encoding is a factor to remembering something, and that is something that could help anyone, even something as early as elementary school. All the more paramount to learn it as soon as possible. I know this is a difficult subject, but it is important. I believe there should be a policy to. I apologize so much for my technical issues. This again, I am so sorry. I don't know what's going on with my recording device, but it seems to be fine now. Now, carrying on. This policy should be enacted. But realistically speaking, what can you do about this? Realistically speaking, there is no clear-cut sign a petition or clear-cut complain to someone about this. What you can do, however, is if you have a younger sibling or you have younger friends about this, it's really a good idea to teach them as soon as possible. Talk to them about this matter. You'll be surprised, even if you just mentioned it once. Remember, the psychology of encoding, even if you just brought it up once, it could drastically help increase the probability of them avoiding the fate of homelessness should, God forbid, that situation ever arise. This is the policy. I believe the policy that all students in elementary school should be exposed to the subject at least once. I believe that would be a great help to this entire nation. This would have been a great help to all of us. This would have been a great help for this entire future generation. And it is a good, pragmatic way to help decrease the risk or decrease the probability of the risk of homelessness. Thank you. How good what am I on time?
6 minutes. You're good.
I apologize again for my technical difficulties. Like my camera keeps getting randomly shut off every now and then. It's frustrating.
No worries. It happens to all of us sometimes. All right. Does anyone want to go next?
No.
All
I need to like reposition myself.
Did you need me to set a timer?
I'm gonna time myself.
Okay.
Thank you though.
Sure.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay. So when I was about 14 years old, I was given the opportunity to volunteer with the Silicon Valley Pet Project, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on finding homes for shelter and rescue animals. And when I was volunteering with them, I would go to adoption events a lot to help out. And I remember one particular event that I went to, I met this little 4-month-old French bulldog, the cutest little dog ever, but he didn't have any eyes. He was completely blind. And I remember talking to his foster mom, and I was like, what happened to this dog? She told me that he was purchased from a pet store. And then about a week or so after he was purchased, he started showing signs of this infection, this disease. And his owners, the people that bought him, took him to a shelter and surrendered him because they didn't want to deal with a disabled dog. So I was like, how did he get this infection so badly, like so quickly? And she told me that he was actually from a puppy mill. So for those of you that don't know, a puppy mill is basically a commercial, large-scale dog breeding facility. So these puppy mill owners are focusing on, shoveling out as many dogs as they can, constantly breeding them instead of the well-being of the dogs. They want the profit. About 2 million dogs are born into puppy mills every year in the US, and they are deprived of basic survival needs, air, food, water, shelter, temperature regulation. And while these dogs are being cultivated and neglected, basically, about 1 million dogs in shelters across the country are being euthanized because they're not being adopted. So not only are puppy mills very detrimental to these dogs, they are also harmful to the environment and to our economy. And my proposed solution for this is that the government should ban, legalize these puppy mills, and also education on where these dogs are coming from should be required upon purchase, but also public education should be enforced to help end these puppy mills. So I know when I say puppy mills, you're not thinking, oh, the environment, that's going to hurt the environment. But actually, puppy mills cause literal constant damage to the environment. The Humane Society outlined a case where a puppy mill owner was disposing of about 200 pounds of dead animals every month in, very terrible ways, just kind of dumping it on his property. And that's obviously a violation of a lot of environmental laws, but he didn't care because he was getting the profits of the dogs he was selling. And, these dogs also are being neglected. They're living in their own waste, and these wastes are finding their ways into human drinking water supplies like rivers and aquifers. And then humans are drinking this water, and it's causing really, really harmful, sometimes fatal infections. And also, just the dog waste being left out for long periods of time produces methane gas, which is a very, very powerful greenhouse gas that is responsible for global warming and climate change. So the more of these puppy mills that we have, the more thousands of dogs that are harbored in these puppy mills in terrible conditions, essentially the more harm is being done to the environment when it's not necessary. And not only are these puppy mills very, very harmful to the environment, they're also hurting our economy. In the article, The Amelioration of Pet Overpopulation and Abandonment, it's discussed how about $3 billion total is spent every year in the United States by governmental and non-governmental animal organizations just trying to provide basic care for all of these homeless dogs, which is a lot of money that doesn't need to be spent because these animals are just being abandoned for no reason. They could just be getting adopted. And also, let alone the economy and the environmental issues, these puppies are literally suffering every single day. A lot of them, the moms are just being bred until they die. And when they can't have puppies anymore, they're being killed and the bodies are being disposed of or just left there. And in her article, the author Kaylee Berger, she outlines how these puppies literally don't have proper nutrition, proper health care, proper socialization. They don't have any of the basic needs to survive and to thrive. So when people are adopting these dogs, they're coming with all of these health issues and, mentally and physically. And it's like what happened to that French bulldog I was talking about. He, no one told the owners where he came from. So he developed all of these health issues because of the conditions he was born into. And due to this, I think just banning these puppy mills is a really, really great long-term solution. All of these issues would go away. Dogs would stop being abandoned. We have a lot of overpopulation in this country of these dogs. And if they all end up, we can clear out the shelters. If they all end up stopping the breeding, and also, the environment, the economy would be, it'd be saving a lot of trouble. There's a lot of strain on both of those resources with these puppy mills. However, the most important ally that we have against puppy mills is education. A lot of people don't even know that puppy mills exist. They don't know what they are. They don't know what's happening. So requiring that if you're buying a dog, you're told where it's coming from and the conditions that it was living in would help people realize, maybe I don't want to be buying these dogs and supporting this company, because when you're buying a dog from them, you're giving them your money to keep operating. And also just, educating the people around you on the situation. I know a lot of people in my life didn't know what puppy mills were until I told them. People just don't know. It's kind of swept under the rug because animal welfare is not a common normalized practice in our country, and it definitely should be. But animal suffering is not going to end just by talking about it. It's really, really important that you tell a friend, tell your family, educate the people around you, because education is the first step in ending these puppy mills. And just by telling one person or signing one petition, you could literally save the life of a puppy. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I think we're supposed to ask if anyone has questions. No? Okay, thanks.
Good job. Does anyone want to go next? I can go if not.
I can go too. It doesn't matter.
Sure, if you want, no problem.
I'll just get it out of the way. Alrighty. All right, and then do you mind timing for me also? Awesome, thank you.
No problem. I'll give you a thumbs up.
Okay. When suffering becomes too great, I can say to those that I love you, come be by my side and say goodbye. This is a quote from Brittany Maynard, who was diagnosed with an astrocytoma, which is a form of brain cancer, and decided to use the death with dignity law. She passed away peacefully, surrounded by her loved ones at the age of 29. So what is the death with dignity law? Death with dignity is a physician aid in dying. So you're given a prescribed pill. Well, there's actually more than one, and you dump it into a beverage. And with this will put you into a coma and you'll slip away peacefully. And why would you do this, you may ask? This is because this is because terminally ill patients who are only given like a 6-month life expectancy, and this is to allow them to live out the rest of their lives not suffering and being able to take some control back that the illness took away from them. So why should this be legalized? So far, this is legal in 8 states and Washington, D.C. So we're trying to make this legal in all 50 states to give everyone the equal opportunity to be able to choose when and where they end their life. So moving on into why it should be legalized. This isn't something that happens overnight. Like if you are a depressed human or you just don't want to live anymore, that's not a valid reason. You have to be given a life expectancy and be diagnosed with a terminal illness. So this isn't something just anybody can do. Another thing is this is about choice. So like I mentioned earlier, people who are diagnosed with a terminal illness, they're not at the steering wheel at this point. The illness is taking over them. So being able to give them their dignity back and being able to die with dignity instead of losing all motor skills and not being able to communicate in their last moments with their family, that's something that advocates and past patients want to do for future people who are unfortunately dying of terminal illness. Another thing I will go into is I'll talk about Cody Curtis and Brittany Minard, who were both terminally ill and who decided to use the death with dignity law. So let's get into the process. So the process, according to deathwithdignity.org, you must have 2 physicians to verify the patient's residency, the diagnosis, the prognosis, the mental competence, as well as their voluntariness at the time of the request. So you'll have 2 waiting periods, the first waiting period is the time from the oral request, and the second one is from the time of the oral request to the filing of the prescription. So this typically takes about 3 to 4 weeks, but you're not given a specific time frame in order to do so. This is something that you decide to do on your own terms. So some people set a date after the holidays, or they feel their body is starting to shut down and they are feeling that they're losing what is used to them, like their bowels or stuff like that. So typically what is said is you know when you know basically. So when you're at the doctor, you kind of have to explain to them. They'll know that you're terminally ill, but you will have to go on to explain to them how you are prepared to avoid suffering and end your life. This is obviously not an easy topic, and it's pretty controversial. I mean, why would someone end their life? Isn't that a little selfish? Well, when it comes down to it, it's at that point, it's about the patient and making sure they pass with dignity. They're able to be around the ones that they love, and they don't feel as though they're a burden to their families. So moving on, in the documentary How to Die in Oregon, it shows the lives of terminally ill patients who are either thinking about or moving forward with the death with dignity law. It also shows the journey of their family members and the advocates that are fighting for either past loved ones that were not able to take advantage of that law and future patients. So as we approach the topic, I want to make it very clear that death with dignity is about choice. This is not something that is black and white. Like, you are able to choose. If you decide at the end that you do not want to do it, there's no problem with that at all. In fact, at the time when you are set and to take this concoction, they ask you, one, do you know what this is going to do to you? And two, are basically like, are you prepared? Like, you have a choice, you don't have to do it. So you're given that option. It's not set in stone. In the article, Access Aid of Dying in the United States, I'm going to quote, "The loss of autonomy and dignity is the main motivation for most patients." So basically with that, I kind of go off what I said earlier, but in order to live the final enjoyable days of your life or months, I personally wouldn't want to see my family suffering. And unfortunately, that does cut my time shorter with them, but as I wouldn't want them to be suffering. And I would assume that others would want that as well. So when we talk about choice, you know, at the end, it is your choice. And so your family members, of course, are going to have a say in everything. There are options that you can have a volunteer come to your house and discuss what goes on during that time, and you know what the family should know, and just kind of get an idea of what your family member is thinking and why they would even choose the option to end their life themselves with physician aid. So I'm going to move on to talk about Cody Curtis and Brittany Minard. So Cody Curtis is a 54-year-old mother, daughter, wife, friend, who unfortunately was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer that is not treatable by chemotherapy. So basically in her part of the documentary, it kind of goes over why she's choosing to die. You can also see the deterioration of her health as well. So Brittany Minard, she had to move. So unlike Cody Curtis lived in Oregon. She was an Oregonian. Oregon legalized death with dignity in 1994. So Brittany Minard had to move from California to Oregon in order to access this law when she was diagnosed. So in her article, My Right to Die at 29, she says, "My quality of life as we know it was gone. There is no treatment that would save my life, and the recommended treatment would destroy the time I had left." So what can we do in order to make situations like Cody and Brittany, how are we able to give this to others in the country that do not have this legalized in their state? You are able to go to their website, deathwithdignity.org, and share it to your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. And you can educate people on this topic, and especially call out to the ones that might not have this law in their state. Another thing you can do is meet with your state representative and set an appointment. You also be able to go to a public legislation hearing in order to get your view across, but make sure you have all the facts down, and deathwithdignity.org and other sources are great in order to learn more about it. So as I wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Brittany Minard. Someone that didn't want to die, but wanted to end their life on their own terms. "I will die upstairs in my bedroom with my husband, mother, stepfather, and best friend by my side, and pass peacefully. I can't imagine trying to rob anyone else of that choice." I urge you all to think about Brittany and Cody and understand why this should be passed in all 50 states, so we can end the inevitable suffering and allow the terminally ill to die with dignity. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right, cool. Thank you.
Good job. All right. Allison, did you want to go or do you want me to go first?
I could go if you're okay with going last.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Just set up.
Did you need me to set a timer?
I got it. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Oh man, this is not really eye level. It's okay. There are about 500,000 children in the foster care system that are going from home to home each day, not knowing what a loving and stable family is like. We're fortunate enough to be in college and not have to worry about this, going from home to home, not knowing where we'll live in the next few days, and having to worry about our own safety. So, what does it take for a child to get adopted? What does a family have to go through to adopt a child? Why is there so many children stuck in the system? And why are there so many families getting denied of being adopted? Well, the adoption process needs to be revised in a way that is fair for all families to adopt and not be based on unfair requirements such as race, sex, or culture. So a lot of these adoption agencies do prioritize these 3 requirements and so many more that are unfair. So a lot of adoption agencies place emphasis on race. A lot of them limit same-sex couples from adopting. And this leads to so many children getting stuck in the foster care system, having to deal with maltreatment. So an article by Ann Scott Tyson called Removing Race from Adoption actually mentions a survey done in 1995, mentioning how majority of US states actually place importance on race, ethnicity, and culture. And 12 of these states actually prioritize this over prompts in the adoption process. So this results in about 49% of the 500,000 children being minorities. So many of these children who are minorities get stuck in the foster care system, having to deal with all this maltreatment. So many of these adoption agencies prioritize this instead of what they think is the child's best interest. The child's best interest gets neglected, and so many of them get stuck in the foster care system. And also mentioned in the article, Leora Neal, director of New York's adoption referral services, says that children need to know their cultural roots, and if they don't, they're treated as misfits. But what does this have to do with what is in the child's best interest and their own safety, and what will be a loving and stable home for them? This just is a constant cycle of them getting stuck in this system and having to deal with this maltreatment. This also goes hand in hand with how so many adoption agencies actually deny a lot of same-sex couples from adopting. Another article by John Hanna mentions how a government-elect, Laura Kelly from Kansas, reviews a law that is in Kansas about how there's a lot of legal protections that protect these adoption agencies from rejecting same-sex couples because it goes against their faith. So many of these reject these couples no matter how stable they are, their financial stability, their willingness to adopt, and what they can prove to be a stable home. So many of these rejections just lead to these children being stuck here in the system, having to deal with the maltreatment. And so this also goes into how another article mentions from Dr. Frank R. Edwards from the article Cumulative Prevalence of Confirmed Maltreatment in the Foster Care System, how an analysis and reporting system reports how 12% of these children stuck in the foster care system deal with maltreatment, and 9% of these children are minorities. Going back to my first point of how so many of these adoption agencies do prioritize race and what they see is the best interest of these children. And even Ann Scott has said in her article that race matching traps these children in the system. So instead of adoption agencies prioritizing the safety of their children and what they see as fit, they allow these children to also go into these foster care system homes that they have to deal with abuse, that they have to worry about their safety and their physical and mental health every and each day, not even being able to learn about their cultural roots, not even being able to experience an actual family. So what could we do to improve this matter and to stray away from these adoption agencies having their own ideas of what they feel is a stable family? Well, A lot of us can volunteer to be mentors for these kids, learn about each of these kids and what their life is going to be like. Also, aside from that, we can also volunteer as a court-appointed special advocate. So these people basically advocate for the child's best interest and what they see fit as will be safe in a loving, stable environment for these children. So it's not fixing the whole problem entirely, but it is a step to stray away from these adoption agencies prioritizing unfair requirements. So overall, even if not all of us will be able to adopt one day, or if not all of us want to adopt one day, it's still children that are our future generation, and we should want to have the best interest for these children. We shouldn't allow adoption agencies to continue to prioritize unfair requirements that have nothing to do with these children's safety, with their mental health, and what they will do in the future. Thank you.
Good job. All right. Let me try and angle myself here. Okay, it's kind of slanted, but I hope y'all can see me okay. All right. All right, so good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a wonderful morning. I wanted to start off by asking you guys a pretty serious question. So could I get a show of hands on how many of you guys have donated blood before? All right, all right. So did you know that according to the FDA, you could be just as equivalent to those who work in critical infrastructure industries by completing one simple task that can save up to 3 lives? This right here is 2 cups, which is exactly equivalent to 1 pint, which is how much blood that you donate in 1 unit. So this right here is the amount of blood that it takes to save up to 3 lives. So I understand some of you may have a fear of needles or a fear of blood or gore, things like that. I used to be one of those people, so I completely understand. In fact, it's actually 20% of the population have a fear of needles. So although this may be true, and some of you might have a fear of needles or blood, this acts as a wall between you and saving lives. So due to the overwhelming shortage of blood donations, I propose that all universities and schools host at least 4 blood drives a year. So not only will this help to educate students on the importance of blood donation, but it will actually increase the amount of donations in itself. So throughout the years, I have learned to speak up about things that I'm super passionate about and things that I believe in. And because I've been involved in this issue for so long, I really feel a need and a pull to educate as many people as I can on this issue. My journey all started 13 years ago when I learned that my mom had a blood disease called sickle cell anemia. Now, sickle cell anemia typically runs in the genetics of people who are of African American descent. And because I am 7 different ethnicities, my mom, who was mixed, actually did fit into that category. So sickle cell anemia is a blood disease in which your red blood cells are sickle-shaped or crescent moon-shaped, and it actually causes extremely severe sickle cell episodes called sickle cell crises, which are extremely painful and pretty much cause your veins to become blocked by the red blood cells due to their sickle-like shaped. And so growing up, I witnessed my mom having a lot of episodes, a lot of sickle cell crises, and I saw just how painful it was to her. And The only treatment that really helped alleviate some of her pain, and honestly, it's what helped her to survive, was blood transfusions. So she would get blood transfusions every 4 to 8 weeks. And of course, as her daughter, who I was, really close to her, I would go with her and sit through her blood transfusions with her. And as time went on, my curiosity grew stronger and stronger. And I grew a passion for learning more about her disease and what I could do to give back to the community. So because I'm a trained and certified American Red Cross ambassador, I understand how much goes into hosting blood drives and just how bad universities need more of them. So when I was 7 years old, I was the first to host. Actually, I was the youngest person in my town, Gilroy, California, to host a blood drive in honor of my mom. It was a lot of work, but at 7 years old, I was able to do it. So I know for a fact that universities are definitely capable of hosting at least 4 a year. So twice a year, ever since I was 7, I have been volunteering and working at local blood drives. And in addition, in high school, I actually started my high school's very first American Red Cross Club, which quickly grew to become the largest club that my high school had ever seen. With 48 club members, we were helping the community by getting involved in local projects and setting up blood drives at my high school, and really just educating the community on how important blood donation really is. And then lastly, my freshman year of high school, I took a couple training courses on how to become an American Red Cross ambassador, and eventually accomplished my goal. And so to this day, I'm still working at blood drives and continuing my best to educate people on this importance. So nothing would be possible without my mom. She's the one that inspired me to get involved and do this in the first place. And so in 2015, she actually passed away due to sickle cell anemia. And so, this was really hard for my family and I, because for so long, we grew up seeing her experience the pain that was caused due to her illness. And, these blood transfusions really were what was keeping her alive. And so, this just causes me to think about all the other little girls that are in my position, that have grown up going to the hospital with their parents and watching their parents get blood transfusions because they need them in order to survive, or vice versa. All the parents that are watching their children get blood transfusions because they need them to survive, people that get blood transfusions not only are patients of blood diseases such as sickle cell anemia, but oftentimes blood transfusions are needed within surgeries, within trauma and cancer, and so many other diseases. And so my promise to my mom was to continue on this legacy and raise awareness of the shortage of blood donations, and just how important it is, So I feel it's really important that we need to take advantage of the gift we've been given, the gift of actually being able to donate, because a lot of people can't due to medical reasons. And so for those people who can't donate, it's just as important to continue to spread the word and advocate for blood donation. So my mom was actually one of the 100,000 people diagnosed with sickle cell disease. And according to the American Red Cross, approximately 36,000 units of red blood cells are needed every day. According to Medical News Today, donating blood actually burns up to 650 calories and reduces high blood pressure as well. So not only is donating blood benefiting the recipient, but it's also benefiting the donor. So blood donation is extremely important, and millions of Americans are in need. Due to COVID, there's actually been a shortage of blood donations. So for example, the blood drives that I usually volunteer at have also been canceled. So the shortage is that much relevant. And it's all the more reason to try and get involved as soon as you can to donate. A huge difference would be made if universities hosted at least 4 blood drives a year. Not only would this educate students on the experiences that I've been through and the experience that millions of other people go through due to the shortage of blood donations, but it would actually also increase the numbers of blood donations as well. So honestly, the change starts with you, and together we can save lives. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for sharing that. And,
Yeah.
and my condolences to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You know, it's again part of my promise to her and, you know, the legacy that I said I would continue. So, yeah, I'm happy I was able to kind of have an opportunity to speak about this in class. But yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys. All right. So, oh, that's what I was going to ask. Let me stop recording real quick.